Hello, dear listeners. My name is Rachel, and tonight I'll be your guide through the shadows. While Ben has been your familiar voice in the dark, tonight it's my turn to lead you down paths twisted and wonder. So, here we go. Story 1. The Vanishing Hitchhiker. There's something about snowy highways at night that feels otherworldly, isolated, almost timeless. But sometimes isolation isn't the scariest thing. You ever heard those stories about hitchhikers on deserted roads? I always thought they were just urban legends. Until that night. I was driving back home after a holiday dinner at my friend's cabin in the mountains. The snowstorm had hit earlier than expected, and the highway was practically deserted. The flakes were so thick they blurred the edges of the road. My tires crunched over fresh snow, and the faint glow of my dashboard was the only warmth in the cold, dark night. About an hour into the drive, my gas gauge dipped dangerously low. I hadn't seen a gas station in miles, and the thought of being stranded in the freezing cold made my stomach twist. I rounded a bend, and that's when I saw her. A woman stood on the shoulder of the road, her figure barely visible through the swirling snow. She wasn't wearing a coat, just a thin dress that whipped around her legs in the wind. I slowed down, unsure if I should stop. Who stands in the middle of nowhere during a storm like this? As I pulled up beside her, she turned her head. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes looked empty. Not sad or scared, just hollow. "Are you okay?" I asked, rolling down the window slightly. My breath fogged up the glass. She nodded, her lips barely moving. "I need a ride," she said, her voice soft and flat, like she was reciting lines from a script. Every instinct told me to drive away, but I couldn't just leave her there. She climbed into the back seat without another word, clutching her hands tightly in her lap. The temperature in the car seemed to drop, even with the heater blasting. "Where are you headed?" I asked, trying to break the tension. She didn't answer right away. Finally, she whispered, "Just down the road." The silence was suffocating. Every so often, I glanced in the rearview mirror. She was staring straight ahead, her expression unreadable. About 10 minutes later, she suddenly spoke. "Slow down," she said, her voice sharper this time. I glanced back at her. "Why? We're in the middle of nowhere." "Slow down." Her tone sent chills down my spine. Reluctantly, I eased off the gas. Moments later, a sharp curve appeared out of nowhere, hidden by the storm. I barely managed to steer through it, my tires skidding dangerously close to the edge. If I hadn't slowed down, I would have gone straight off the road. I turned to thank her, but she wasn't there. I slammed on the brakes, the car sliding to a stop. My heart was pounding as I twisted around in my seat. The back seat was empty, the door still locked. Snow swirled around the car, erasing any sign of footprints. She was gone. I sat there shaking, trying to make sense of what just happened. Had I imagined her? Was it the exhaustion, the stress of the storm? As I tried to calm myself, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. On the frost-covered back window, a single word had been written from the inside: "Careful." I didn't know what to do. My hands were trembling as I put the car back in gear and drove forward, my eyes darting between the road and the mirrors. A few miles later, I saw headlights up ahead. A police car was parked on the side of the road, its lights flashing. Relief washed over me as I pulled up beside it. The officer rolled down his window. "Everything okay?" I told him about the woman, how she'd warned me about the curve and then vanished. His expression darkened. "You're not the first to say that," he said. "There have been reports of a woman on this stretch of road for years, always during snowstorms. That curve?" He paused, glancing at the bend behind us. "That's where she died. Her car went off the edge. She didn't make it." I didn't know what to say. The officer gave me a sympathetic nod and told me to drive safe. As I pulled back onto the highway, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still with me, watching from the shadows. Now, every time I drive through a snowstorm, I think of her, the woman who saved my life after losing her own. Story 2. The Highway Stalker. Highways can be lonely, but on that freezing winter night, I wished I was alone. Have you ever felt like something was following you, even when you knew no one else should be there? I thought I was imagining it, but I wasn't. It started when I was driving through a desolate stretch of highway, late at night, during the worst snowstorm of the season. I was heading back from a business trip, eager to get home. The snow was relentless, and visibility was terrible. The only thing keeping me on the road was the reflective markers and the rhythmic swish of my windshield wipers. I hadn't seen another car for miles, not even a gas station or a house, just endless white fields and the occasional tree line. That's when I saw it. A figure darted across the road, just beyond the reach of my headlights. I slammed the brakes, the tires skidding on the icy pavement. My heart was pounding as I stared into the swirling snow ahead, but there was nothing there. No movement, no footprints, nothing. I told myself it was just an animal, maybe a deer, but something about the way it moved didn't sit right. It wasn't the quick, erratic motion of a startled deer. It was calculated, almost human. I shook it off and kept driving, but the uneasiness lingered. About 15 minutes later, I noticed something in my rearview mirror. At first, I thought it was just the snow playing tricks on me, but then I realized there was a shadow, faint but distinct, keeping pace with my car. It didn't make sense. I was going at least 60 miles per hour, and there was nothing back there but open road. The shadow grew closer. I pressed the gas, my pulse racing, but no matter how fast I went, it stayed right behind me. Finally, I worked up the nerve to glance over my shoulder. That's when I saw it. A creature, running on all fours, its elongated limbs bending unnaturally, its pale skin stark against the snow. Its face, I don't even know how to describe it. The eyes were too big, the mouth too wide, filled with jagged teeth, and it was smiling. I panicked, swerving on the icy road. The creature didn't stop. It was gaining on me. I floored the gas, the engine roaring as the car sped forward. My tires skidded dangerously on the ice, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away. The creature didn't chase like an animal. It was deliberate, almost playful, weaving in and out of the shadows cast by my taillights. Every few seconds, it would vanish, only to reappear closer than before. My car crested a small hill, and for a moment I lost sight of it. I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd outrun it. But as I descended the hill, there it was, standing in the middle of the road, upright now, its long arms hanging limply at its sides. I barely managed to swerve around it, my tires slipping as I fought to keep control of the car. In my rearview mirror, I saw it turn its head slowly, following me with those impossibly large eyes. I was shaking, tears streaming down my face as I desperately searched for a sign of civilization. And then, finally, I saw it, the faint glow of a gas station ahead. I pulled in so fast I nearly slid into the pumps. The lights felt like a beacon of safety, and I stumbled out of the car, gasping for air. The attendant, an older man with a weathered face, looked at me with concern. "Rough night?" he asked. I tried to explain what I'd seen, but he cut me off, his expression darkening. "You saw it, didn't you?" My blood ran cold. "People say there's something out there," he continued, lowering his voice. "Something that hunts on nights like this. You're lucky you made it here." I didn't want to believe him, but then I noticed his gaze shift. He was looking past me, toward the highway. I turned slowly, my heart hammering. At the edge of the light, just beyond the gas station's reach, the creature stood, its twisted body silhouetted against the snow. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just watched. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in the gas station until dawn, too terrified to go back out. When the sun rose, the creature was gone, but the memory of its smile will haunt me forever. Now, every time I drive down a snowy highway at night, I can't help but check the rearview mirror, half expecting to see it again. And if you're ever out there, alone on a winter road, remember this: some things in the snow aren't meant to be seen.